Hey, it's Mick. Let's talk Dungeons & Dragons. I have been playing a bi-weekly D&D 5e campaign now for about a year and some change. And in the game, it's been about a year since my character left home to go on this journey. He's changed a lot over this year of adventuring, and I felt like it was time to update his design to better reflect that. Now, I could very easily just turn this into a vlog talking about my D&D experiences, how I got introduced to it, what I like about it, what I love about it, what I hate about it, what I really hate about it. But to avoid going on a bunch of long tangents that could just as easily be put in their own videos, and if this video does well enough, they just might, I'm just going to try and keep the focus on my character and this direwolf here. And before you ask, no, that's not his familiar. Dude, I wish. He has a bag of tricks, and the direwolf just happens to be one of the creatures he can summon from the bag. So, not a familiar, but the next best thing, honestly. But I'll talk more about that later. Also, full disclosure, I did use reference for the direwolf. I even traced a few photos from that Google page you saw earlier, later on, to try and better understand wolf anatomy. Now, I didn't use those traces for the final illustration, mind you. I just wanted to be clear about my process on that because I know that tracing and art theft is a sensitive subject for a lot of people. Again, that's a topic that could be its own video. Anyway, what you're seeing here is not what I used for the final illustration. I was facing some art block at that moment, but I figured if I can't get it perfect, I should at least get a simple sketch down just to try and get some ideas for the final illustration. Like, I knew I wanted the direwolf in there, I just wasn't sure how exactly to pose Milo leaning against him. This current sketch also did not include Milo's cloak. Hood. Cloak? Hood? Hooded cloak. There we go. And I questioned whether or not to keep it for this piece based on events in the game that preceded me drawing this, but I decided to include it to make the design feel more like an adventurer. He just looked like a farm boy without it. Which, I mean, not too far off from the actual origin, but we'll get to that later. Also, if I'm predicting this right, you should be seeing me pencil out what will eventually be the final design for the head. I don't recommend starting a drawing from the head, by the way, at least not without blocking out the rest of the body first. This isn't normally how I do my figures, but that's just how this particular illustration went down. You can see me reference the original design quite a bit. Yeah, I know it's a redesign, but it's still the same character. Some of the elements have to stay the same, like the aforementioned cloak, and his skin tone. I eventually ended up going with a different hue, but it's still in the same reddish, tannish ballpark. Speaking of which, I wasn't aware that sun elves were a thing in D&D until after I gave him the tan skin. Initially, I just wanted to do something fun and different for the design, but then one of the other players was like, "Oh, is he a sun elf?" And I asked the question, what is a sun elf? So I went to Google to find out what exactly a sun elf was. And when I was looking at the sun elf culture and everything and the kind of people that they were, it seemed to add some depth to what I had already written down, so I just rolled with it. It made sense. So there's some things that stayed the same. However, there are some things that I've obviously changed. For instance, I got rid of the glasses, which were a sign, to me anyway, that he was growing up and shifting in the kind of person he was becoming. The hat is also missing, and that's a character development symbol thing that may come into play later on in the game based on how things go. I also wanted to include 2 items of his in particular for this design, including his Ring of Guidance, which has been super useful in helping the party find various objects and people, and Milo's recently constructed Transmutation Stone. Yep, School of Transmutation. Quick guess what my favorite anime is. I also placed it in a way that felt very Doctor Strange Eye of Agamotto-esque. Very appropriate for a wizard. You'll also notice later on that the green magic in the original has been changed to a bright yellow bleeding into an orange in the final design. Not unlike the sun, which, yeah, he is a sun elf. I didn't think about that when I did it. Amazing the things I'm paying attention to subconsciously. I will say, the 2 points that gave me the most trouble in the design phase was 1, the head. I shrank it down to make him seem visibly older than his old design because, again, it's been a year's time. And 2, the sleeves. The sleeves kept throwing me off for the entire piece. Because the entire time I'm thinking, oh crap, the arms are too long, I made them too big. But then I go back to the skeleton layer and it's like, no, dude, they're fine. I suppose that's the price I pay for giving him those medieval, Renaissance-y type poofy sleeves. And there's the direwolf, and the references for said direwolf. But you know, I haven't really gotten into this character's backstory yet, and with this being D&D, there's really only one way to do it. So if you'll just give me a minute, I'll be right back.
Hi, my name's Milo Al-Hidia. I'm a half-human, half-sun elf wizard, and I'm 15 years old. I came from a small trading village called Belhaven. My human mom is a seamstress, and my elven father is the town smithy. And when I was 9, a traveling wizard showed up and performed a magic show for the passing spectators. And I was one of those spectators. I was so inspired by the performance that ever since that day, I grabbed every book on magic I could and began my study of the mystic arts. That being said, I wasn't very good at it at first. I mean, my starting intelligence was 12. I tried my best, but I made a lot of messes along the way. Eventually, I thought it would be a good idea to go out into the world and find a mentor to teach me more about magic. Maybe even how to do it without turning your neighbor into a giant talking chicken by accident. With a teary goodbye, my mom gave me a new cloak and hat, and my dad gave me a handcrafted dagger. And I set off for the Rose Tower, the magic capital of the world.
Yep, that was how I talked in the beginning for this character. So yeah, that was the original goal, to go find a magic teacher at the Rose Tower. And I did eventually meet that goal, but the DM had other plans. The next morning, a massacre occurred at the Rose Tower, and a new threat loomed to destroy the world, the cult of Orcus. And Milo's superior has charged him and the rest of his party to travel to the other towers of the world, to gather support and form alliances to combat this threat. And Orcus is... yeah, he's a pretty nasty demon. And after all of the scarring and taxing adventures Milo's been on fighting against this evil, A, his voice has changed. For 2 reasons. 1, it's been a year. Like I said, puberty had to hit at some point. And 2, the previous voice was not something I could do subtly or quietly. Now, I can get away with recording stuff during the day because literally nobody is here. Excuse me? You want to run that by me again? Except for that guy, apparently. At night, not so lucky. If it's not me making noise and waking everybody up, it's my Mexican neighbors having a karaoke fiesta that makes it impossible to record anything without picking that up. Look, I'm all for a good time, but right now? Really? On the weekend I can understand, but
It's Tuesday night. What are you doing?
I really need to invest in a soundproof booth. Anyway, the B reason is that his personality has changed as well. Now, first off, he's been through a bit of trauma. He's been tricked and betrayed by a friend he thought he could trust, he's had his entire existence called into question at one point, and when he met his idol in person for the first time, he found out that not only was he not what Milo was expecting, but he was also up to some shady stuff. Milo didn't take it well. He was also a pacifist when we started, as I was hoping for more monster encounters. And I wanted to be more kindly to our human enemies, as unlike monsters, I felt like humans, or humanoids as is the case for D&D, could be reasoned with. Plus, this character was 15 and never fought anyone before in his life. And while it did lead to some great emotional character moments, the DM had other plans. And I had to adapt to those plans in order for everyone to have a good time. Would have been great to know that ahead of time, before I made the characters, so that way this wouldn't even be an issue! Point being, he went from being a strict pacifist to a martial pacifist. He can fight and kill now, though he'd prefer not to. But in spite of all this, there is still something good to come from these adventures. Remember how I said his starting intelligence was 12? Well, now it's 15. So he's not a great wizard just yet, but he is much more competent now. And it's great to see him improve so much so fast. Proud of my little cinnamon roll. But I think that's gotten to his head a bit as he's getting more, let's say, quippy during the more recent combat encounters. Milo's been through a lot, and I'm proud of the progress he's made, and I'm eager to see where he goes next on his journey. But I should probably keep in mind that whatever I hope happens, the case will probably be that the DM has other plans. Oh, actually, real quick, I'm looking back at this in the editing phase, and I'm really happy with how the color scheme came out. It gives off a very warm feeling. I like... Wait, hold on a second. Warm? Warm like the sun? He's a sun elf? Oh my god! Another pun that I didn't think of until just now. Sheesh, man, where's that ring of guidance so I can find my focus again? Oh, it's right here. Cool. Also, took me a few tries to find the right color for the direwolf's fur. But thankfully, I found a nice maroon color that works really well next to Milo. Funnily enough, Milo was not the first character I had planned to play. I was actually thinking about going with a much more dark character who was a tiefling rogue or a sorcerer. But then the other two players we were starting with at the time created a
Paladin of the Raven Queen, the goddess of death.
and the other one was
A princess turned vampire who has a long and torturous past filled with abuse and betrayal.
and I was like, okay, I need to brighten this up, otherwise this is gonna be a disaster. Look, I get that people have different tastes and everything. You do you, man, but me, personally, I did not sign up for Emo Quest. Admittedly, though, Emo Quest does sound like a hilariously pretentious D&D module. Someone should get on that. Anyway, that's why I wanted to create a character who was much lighter, to balance out the personalities of the party. Speaking of balancing light and shadows, I decided to try a new method of shading this time around to try and speed up my process. It ended up just being a mix of that and my old method that didn't bring up any noticeable difference in speed. But hey, it worked out well, so I shouldn't complain. And if you're wondering how I came up with a name, it's basically a mashup of two random characters. The first being Milo James Thatch from Disney's Atlantis the Lost Empire, and the second being Dr. Mendelo Al-Hidia from the Cowboy Bebop movie. Then again, maybe that's where I got the idea to give him tan skin. Also, that 12 intelligence I started out with, that wasn't an unlucky roll. I did that on purpose. But Mick, I can hear the hardcore D&D players screaming right now. 12 is a terrible intelligence for a wizard. For other classes, it's fine, sure, but a wizard? Seriously? Why would you do this to yourself? Well, when trying to come up with a new character idea, I had just finished watching Little Witch Academia, and as I watched little Akko trying so hard to be a great witch like her idol and failing spectacularly, I got that spark in my mind and said, that's it, that's what I'm doing. Something about playing a wizard who just wasn't good at their job amused me to no end, and furiously frustrated the player playing the paladin. Say that 10 times fast. Admittedly, in retrospect, I think making a wild magic sorcerer might have worked better with the original concept. But then again, like I said before, his intelligence increased over the campaign. He got better at magic. That's an option that wouldn't have been available to me if I had gone with the wild magic sorcerer. He's going through some actual growth and development, not just emotionally, but magically as well. You know, like an actual wizard. And yeah, that aspect is fun to watch and play. Now, I wish that maybe he could get a break from the stress and trauma every now and again, but as we all know,
The DM has other plans.
on the subject of other plans, I did change my plans for the background. I originally thought about doing a wide yellow field, but unfortunately, it looked a little too sparse. So I tried my best to cobble up a forest scene instead. This is why I should plan the backgrounds ahead of time. But I still think this turned out well for what it's meant to be. Plus, it's a lesson to remember for next time. And after everything's said and done, it's finished. And again, I'm really proud of how the colors turned out. I'm happy not only with how this picture turned out, but also how far this kid has come since the beginning. And we're not even halfway done with the campaign yet. I'm excited for what's next in Milo's journey. Anyway, that does it for this. Well, it's not really a character design challenge so much as just me drawing my D&D character and getting to talk about him. But thank you for watching all the same. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and leave a comment down below. And feel free to share this with your nerdy friends, especially if those nerdy friends happen to play Dungeons & Dragons. And if you want to see more from me in the future, why not subscribe to stay up to date with all of my creative endeavors. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, stay marvelous. On the subject of other plans, I apparently need to reschedule when I do these recordings.